All right, guys, we are back here on the GameSpot stage at E3 2014. Once again, I'm your host, Sean McGinnis, and I'm joined by Ralph Fulton, the creative director of Forza Horizon 2. Ralph, thanks a lot for jumping on the stage with us.
Not at all. Great to be here. Thanks, Sean.
Cool. So you guys announced Forza Horizon 2 pretty recently, within the past couple weeks or so, but it was at the Microsoft press conference that we got our first really good look at the game, and it's quite a departure from the original one. You guys are going from the mountains of Colorado, a very American, Rocky Mountain kind of setting, and you're taking it across the Atlantic all the way to Southern Europe. And this is something that we talked about the other night, but what was the reason behind moving it to Southern Europe, that sort of Mediterranean coast kind of setting?
So yeah, you're absolutely right. I loved Colorado in the first game, and incredible setting. And when we started looking at this game, we were like, okay, where can we find in the world, and we looked the whole world over, that had the same things and maybe even more, right? So we looked all over the world. We had a bunch of criteria that we absolutely needed to hit. We wanted somewhere that was just stunningly beautiful, really diverse, varied, interesting locations that people will really want to explore. And I guess the interesting thing is when we first looked at the original Horizon, both the south of France and the north of Italy scored really highly. Not as highly as Colorado did, so we went with that.
Right.
But this time on Xbox One, we're able to have this bigger world. So we looked back at our scoring and our criteria. We threw a net over that whole region, that whole Mediterranean coastal region. And it really ticked all our boxes. So we said, let's go to Europe. Let's bring the Horizon Festival to Europe.
Cool. Let's talk about the festival itself. Obviously, that was a sort of a key aspect of the original game, the hub from which you would sort of explore outward toward the rest of the world. What's its role in the second game?
Yeah, so the Horizon Festival, I guess, has expanded since the first game. It's branched out overseas. It's come to Europe, which is in many ways the spiritual home of the great music festivals. And it's still the centerpiece of the game. And it represents for us the combination of awesome cars and car culture, and also festival culture and music, which is an incredibly important part of the Horizon game as well. It brings them both together, and it's the place you'll go to right at the start of the game. That's your first trip to the festival. But beyond that, you're going to go out on a road trip. You're going to go out on much longer journeys from destination to destination, competing in championships, exploring, finding things on the way. And at the end of a road trip, you'll look back to the festival for a big awards party where all the characters in the game, all the drivatars are rewarded for how they've done and the championships they've won.
All right. Now, with the original Forza Horizon, you guys dabbled in a little bit of light storytelling. You had some characters involved there. What's your approach to that this time? How does it compare with that original Forza Horizon?
So Horizon 2 uses drivatar technology that I just mentioned. First launched in Forza 5 last year, and for me, it just changed racing, right? No longer do you have to have fictional drivers with made-up names. Suddenly, your races and your world now in Horizon 2 is filled with real people, your friends, your family, people that you can relate to in the real world. So we've actually found in Horizon 2, we don't need to tell a story. We don't need to have fictional characters to make up the game, because actually the drivatars do all that heavy lifting for us. They're people that you already know. You can relate to the way they drive, the things that they do, and it actually makes the narrative all about you, all about your friends, which I think is much more compelling.
And if it's Turn 10 community manager Brian Ekberg, I know that character is going to drive like a total maniac and is totally going to cut me off at the most inopportune moments of a critical race.
Absolutely. And you know what's really cool for me about drivatar is the way an element of racing games, which maybe hasn't moved on for for many years, suddenly is something you talk about outside the game, right? You and Brian will talk about the things that his drivatar did or your drivatar did. The same thing happens to me. People tweet me about the things my drivatar is doing in races in Forza 5. I think we're going to find that with Horizon 2. These events become water cooler moments.
Mm-hmm. So we had a question here about the soundtrack. I forget who that was, but music, the whole festival was obviously a pretty big part of the original game.
Yeah.
Does the vibe of the overall soundtrack and the licensed song, does that change with the setting, moving from Colorado to Southern Europe, or is it kind of the overall tone going to stay the same?
So we're excited about the music in Horizon 2. I think we did a great job in the first one. More people tweet me about the soundtrack in Horizon 1 than about any other aspect of the game. So our strategy for this game is just to keep doing it more and more right. So the guy who curated the soundtrack in the first one, Rob DeBank, he's this English DJ festival organizer. He's back on board. He's curated the soundtrack for Horizon 2. And we've just given him more room to express himself. So we have twice as many radio stations, more than double the amount of music on disc. So we're actually bringing you more and more music, more diversity. We really hope that you're going to find songs you love, but you're also going to fall in love with new music as well.
So there's this moment that we just saw in the footage here, and it's about 30 seconds past, but you're driving along the road, and your green driving line all of a sudden cuts to the left and into this big open field. It's maybe a vineyard or something like that, but basically it's one of those moments where I was playing for the first time. I was like, wait, this can't be right. This can't be right. What am I doing? I can barely see. I'm in a cockpit view. What's going on here? I'm just smashing into hay bales. But it seems like, getting off the road and kind of taking advantage of the openness of an open world is kind of a focus for you guys, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. We wanted to create a truly open world this time. We've taken the view that if there aren't walls or barriers in real life, well, there shouldn't be them barriers or walls in our game, right? We want you to be able to drive on the road. We want you to be able to explore anywhere off the road as well. So what you're talking about, driving through a vineyard, we're in southern Tuscany here, so there's lots of vineyards there, or across crop fields, through forests, over hills. It's a whole new dimension to exploration and driving within Horizon 2. What it means is we've actually got so much more space to fill with cool stuff to do in cars, right? I'm talking about races, I'm talking about non-racing gameplay as well, challenges and secrets and things to discover.
Now, how do you balance those sort of like crazy detours with the fact that quite often you're going to be driving a McLaren P1 or a really, really fancy sports car that was designed to be driven on the road?
Yeah, absolutely. So throughout the game, I think there's a risk-reward thing going on there, right? Depending on the car you're in, sometimes it could be faster to stay on the tarmac, if you're in a really high-speed performance car. Sometimes, though, if you're in an off-roader, a Ford Raptor, or some of the really extreme cars we've got in the game, it will pay to go off-road. But ultimately, Horizon, the whole All Up franchise is about having fun, doing things which maybe aren't things you would do in real life, but things which are just crazy fun. And sometimes driving across farmland, through crop fields in a Lamborghini Huracan, it's just crazy fun, and we want you to encourage you to do that.
And we've got about a minute or two left here, but I would be just absolutely trounced by our hardcore racing fans in the audience if I didn't talk to you on some level about just, the physics of the driving model.
Yeah.
Obviously, your connection to Forza Motorsport lends itself to any number of questions about the simulation nature of what you're trying to go for here. The original game, you had a whole bunch of driving assists that you could toggle on to make the game pretty hardcore, but at the same time, you didn't drill down into the really esoteric stuff, gear ratios and all that. What's your approach this time around?
So a couple of things here. So we start from the starting point of having Forza Motorsport 5's engine. That's where we started from. We've augmented it, we've enhanced it in lots of different ways. But at its core, we have that same physics system, physics simulation that you see in Forza 5. It still runs at 360 hertz. So there's incredible complexity and sophistication in that physics simulation. A couple of things we do. First of all, because we're driving in an open world, and the way you drive in an open world is different from how you drive on Laguna Seca or Nürburgring, right?
Yeah.
So I guess we re-round off the edges of some of the difficulty in that simulation while still having the complexity underlying it. But we've listened to our fans. From the first game, a lot of guys said, hey, I want to tune my car. I want to be able to play with the suspension, with the gear ratios. So we've brought that back for Forza Horizon 2. In Horizon 2, you can upgrade your car cosmetically in terms of engine parts, but you can also tune it in exactly the same way you would in Forza Motorsport 5. So I hope people are going to be excited to experiment with that in September.
All right, Ralph, sounds great. I had a lot of fun playing it the other night. I'm probably going to try to sneak over there again at some point.
Be my guest.
All right, thanks a lot for joining us on the stage.
Thanks, Sean.